Good afternoon. David Goodman, our speaker, is Chief Executive Officer of the Redwood Empire Food Bank based in Santa Rosa. The REFB is the largest hunger relief organization serving North Coastal California from Sonoma County to the Oregon border. David holds a master's degree in business administration and has devoted more than 2 decades to hunger relief work, committing 18 years to REPF. David is an advocate for hunger relief programs at the local, national, and state levels. He's been recognized by his peers for his work. David has created many new, innovative community programs that have resulted in the expansion of the number of persons REFB can serve, as well as to improve the quality and quantity of food REFB provides. Examples of that would be the summer lunch program for children and diabetes wellness for adults. An impressive statistic to be noted is Redwood Empire Food Bank provides food to approximately 82,000 persons a day. His talk today is how you can end hunger in Petaluma. Please welcome David Goodman.
Hello, everybody. Just to thank you, first of all, thank you for having me here. And I think we're going to go until at 1:30. We're all walking away, right? Like it's over. Is that true? Okay. So I just have a little timer here going. I just want to make sure we're doing okay. So first of all, I want to thank you for putting the lyrics up on the screen. I've spoken to a lot of Rotaries, and I didn't grow up in a singing family. Like I have no sense of how to do it. I don't even know how to do it, how to sing. And so I get in a panic when I come to a place like Rotary where I know there's going to be a song. And so one day I was going to, I think it was the Roner Park Rotary, and I had, on my phone, I had Kate Smith. I was in God Bless America. I just kept playing it over and over, like with this hunch that that was going to be the song they played, and I nailed it. And I went in there, and I knew enough to kind of fumble through the song without really knowing the lyrics. So I appreciate it this afternoon. Very good. So let me just tell you what, I'm not going to have enough time. I've been doing this for 18 years. I'm not going to have enough time between now and the end of this presentation to talk about what it takes to feed so many people. What I prefer when I'm doing this is if you're curious about something, I'll just start talking. But if you're curious about anything, it just takes one person to ask a question, and then it just kind of rolls, and we're going to cover all the same material, but we'll go in your order as opposed to mine, if that's all right. Okay, and it usually just takes one person who has the courage to ask a question, and then we're good to go. So is there anybody who has a question before I start? Yes, thank you. Okay, so that's great. So we have, and I think that people are probably most interested in what's happening here in Petaluma. So we have we have 3 initiatives. We have a senior initiative that we do at the Redwood Empire Food Bank. We have a families initiative, and we have children. And so when it comes to children, a primary outreach that we do is a supper program for children when they're in school. And then after school, they stay in after-school settings, and we feed them there. We also have a robust summer lunch program. So when children go, when the bell rings, some children go to Hawaii, some people go to Acapulco, some people go to Yosemite, and other children go hungry. So we have a robust program here in Petaluma where we provide food. We operate, here in Petaluma, we operate 7 different locations with 16 opportunities for people to receive food. So just to give you a sense of scale, because Sonoma County is kind of an odd place because it's kind of balkanized, where Petaluma and the surrounding region, you kind of focused on Petaluma, and then Sonoma Valley is kind of focused on Sonoma Valley, Santa Rosa, a bit balkanized, which is really interesting as a hunger relief worker, because hunger really doesn't care where it is, it doesn't know where it lives, it crosses all sorts of borders, etc. But to give you a sense of scale, the Redwood Empire Food Bank is your food bank. We're located in Santa Rosa, but we're the only food bank here in Sonoma County. And to give you a sense of scale, Our partner organizations, which would be COTS, for example, here, Elam Church, St. Vincent de Paul, all of these organizations would be what we call our partners, and they're helping to do the type of work that we do in feeding low-income people. But at the end of the year, about $868,000 worth of food was distributed by our partner organizations, and the Redwood Empire Food Bank here in Petaluma distributed about $2 million worth of groceries. So all in, about 925,000 meals by the Redwood Empire Food Bank in conjunction with our partners here in Petaluma. So even though you may not feel connected to everything that's happening in the rest of Sonoma County, we are your food bank. We're now feeding 1 in 6 people in Sonoma County, 82,000 people. And if I were just to kind of fast forward to where we've been most recently, I'll just go back to sort of the realization that I have had as a hunger relief worker. And the reason I say hunger relief worker is that's what's on our name tag, and that's what we are. We do it in the context of food banking, but we could be public policy people in Washington, D.C. We could be flying an aircraft over Africa and booting pallets of food over Africa. But here, food banking is quite specific in the United States of America, where we handle a tremendous amount of donated food, as well as purchased food, as well as government commodities. But where we've really become significant, where we really found sort of our footing, started back with the economic downturn in 2008, where we saw an additional 17,000 people coming to the Redwood Empire Food Bank through that economic downturn. And what was really significant, in looking out at the age of the room here, for many people in our community, it was the first time since the Great Depression that anyone had any sense that you could do all the right things in life and still end up in need. That it wasn't for anything you did wrong. It wasn't like those lazy, poor people that don't want to get a job. But all of a sudden, we found people that looked and behaved just like us, and yet they found themselves in need of assistance. So what did that mean? That mean that children that went to college, got an education, but couldn't find a job and they moved back home. It meant that our partners or our spouses, they lost their jobs and now we were living on one income. And that meant we were starting to tap into our 401ks, our 403bs. It meant that our parents that had retired and they had all that it took to make it through the rest of life suddenly had to go get another job. So it was quite dramatic for us. And then you fast forward from 2008 to the fires, to the Sonoma Complex fire. Well, everybody was in bed, just sleeping, and then somewhere around 11 o'clock at night, it was time to flee. It was time to evacuate. And over the course of time, we ended up feeding, I lost the page, we ended up feeding about 50,000 families over the course of a year's period, distributing about $7 million worth of food. We were open 7 days a week, 8 hours a day at the initial stage of the fire. People were backed up from basically, if you've been to the food bank, from near the airport all the way back to the freeway, just bumper to bumper, 7 days a week, 8 hours a day. And then you fast forward to the federal shutdown. And it was bussy. It was really interesting in the federal shutdown because we actually started getting phone calls from people sort of saying like, what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it, food bank? Like suddenly we had shifted where we had sort of become the sort of instrumental in helping people in need, where there we were feeding federal employees. So what did we do? We fed USDA inspectors, we fed air traffic controllers, and we fed the United States Coast Guard, where we were feeding about 400 coasties several times a week during that shutdown. Just very interesting, and of course, just fast forward a little bit more, and then the Russian River floods, and we're back out there. So the reason I'm sharing that with you is because sometimes people might wonder, like, well, why should we support the food bank? We support COTS, and we support St. Vincent de Paul, and we support the Boys and Girls Club, and we do all this. Why should we support you? You're a big organization. And the reason that you should is because we are the safety net. And it takes, in order to catch 82,000 people every single year, you need a really big safety net. And you need to fortify that safety net, because every time people fall into it, it degrades slightly. You got to keep weaving a net. You got to keep figuring out how to make that net tighter and tighter to catch the most vulnerable populations, the children, for example. So we just started a preschool pilot. We have 3 locations where we're now feeding preschool children. But the reason that you have to keep fortifying that net is because people are falling in. But the key is that if you imagine a circle and we're all around this net and we're pulling it back, right? Waiting for the next disaster, whether it's economic, political, natural, whatever it is. But when people fall in the net that's not on that's sitting on the ground, if you don't have the strength to hold it up, well, a net that sits on the ground doesn't do anybody any good. So when people ask, well, why should we support you because you're big? It's because we're catching an awful lot of people, more than you could ever imagine. And we need to have it up off the ground. I'm going to take a breath there.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
So, two things. One, is it still true that $1 contributed to the food bank gets multiplied by federal things by about 4? If I directly give $1 to St. Vincent's for food, it's 1 to 1.
So I would say this. I would say that yes, for every dollar we spend, all in, fundraising, fuel, insurance, PG&E, for every dollar we spend, we distribute $4 worth of food. So that is true. I would also say that even if it's $1 for $1, it's still a good investment. People got to eat. So there's going to be some day in my life maybe where it's $1 for 3 or $1 for 2. Either way, the people have to eat. So what ends up happening is you need to support St. Vincent de Paul, and you need to support the Redwood Empire Food Bank, and you need to support COTS. And I think we all have the capacity to reach a little deeper and make it significant. Make your support, make your charitable support meaningful to you.
The second question
Yeah.
offends the sensibilities of some of the realtors in this organization. But isn't there just a displacement amongst the poor, living a couple of families in one apartment and all that? Their rents go up and up and up. They can no longer afford to buy their food because they're paying the exorbitant rents and all. And at the bottom level, they're coming out of you to help really subsidize the rents. Is there a way out of that conundrum?
That's a big question. So this is how I feel that question. Life is complicated. There are all sorts of things going on. I mean, the darkest day of my 25 years of being a hunger relief worker was recognizing the irony that I am addressing hunger with food, right? Because we're at the tail end of the whole deal. There's so many better things that could have happened in everybody's life before they ever ended up at the food bank. That being said, the beauty of hunger relief is that it's so simple and that you can end it with a meal. You can end it with a bag of groceries. So for us, our mission is to end hunger in our community. And what ending hunger means for us is making sure that anyone who's in need of food assistance can get the help that they need. And you've done it. And sometimes it's day by day, it's meal by meal, it's grocery bag by grocery bag. But while we're working on the bigger issues, because I don't think anyone in this room is going to be able to handle what it costs to make it affordable to live. So we work it from the other end, which is like whatever the other complexities are in life and people's worlds, let's just make sure they have enough food so they can move on to the next issue, is how we address that. We're the hunger people. Yes?
Who are the competitors in providing food?
So I've not heard that question before, but it's an astute one. So our competitors are really just for your attention. So we don't really see them as competitors. So our partners, all of our partners, and I know we have a representative from COTS here, for example, so we compete for your attention and your support. And that's sort of why I backed into that other comment before, which is give something personally significant, give it a level that's meaningful. I went to the COTS breakfast a few years ago, I remember, and they had the table, and probably most of you have probably been to that at least once. And I remember I was like, okay, the envelope came around, I'm like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna give them $250. And because I can afford $250, I think it will be meaningful to them and I won't really feel it. I feel a little bit, but really I could get away with that. And then I remember thinking, David, don't be such a joke, you know? Why don't you give an amount that's personally significant to you and is significant to COTS? And for me, it ended up being $500. That was a big number for me at the time. Our competitors are our partners, but it's a false choice, because I really would actually say, and that's not a normal rap. It's like my first day trotting this one out, which is basically like, give more, give more. If it's not going to change your life, you're going to, whatever amount you're going to support, if you're going to continue to just live your life, and it's not that you're not going to cut back on anything, you're not going to feel it, it's just a significant number, go ahead and give it. Yes?
Well, I'm talking now about when you check out at the grocery store,
Yes.
there are cards you can buy $1 to support hunger.
Right.
And when you get to the cash and the credit card machine, you want to donate to a program.
Yes.
You're inundated with all of these opportunities to donate. I would rather donate to someone, some people like yours, that I recognize and I know is helping people in my community. So I have no idea. That's why I said three competitors. Because I could have held it there. I thought it was gone.
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah. The fact is there's no shortage of worthy causes. So, you just have to find the people that, you have to do a little research, you have to understand the system. So, if we distribute $40 million worth of food every year at the Redwood Empire Food Bank. 20 million of that is fresh produce. We spend $1 million to bring in $20 million worth of produce. We spend $1 million, and we give all of that produce away. We don't charge a dime for it. But that $20 million wouldn't come into the community unless we got the million. So it's just understanding, and it's complicated. It's complicated to understand the system, but a little bit of research will go a long way, probably. There aren't too many shysters out there. There are a lot of good people doing a lot of great things, and I know there's a common theme, which is, well, maybe shouldn't you just combine? I got to tell you, I see it just the opposite way. I wish there were more helper bees, quite frankly.
So would you prefer just like a one-time, $250 or $500, or ongoing monthly regular contributions? I know, I have some personal causes, the Rotary Foundation, big one, they have public TV and public radio, and stuff. A little bit each month on the credit card, I don't even feel it.
Yeah.
It's ongoing, and it seems like we probably have a French program set up.
Yeah, we do. It's called Full Plate Partners. We love consistent donations, just because we can budget and depend on that. But we have, yet in my history, we've never turned away a one-time donation either. So we're comfortable either way.
Yeah, I'm curious about the donations of food. Right, I know we get money from people, but where do the food donations come from?
Yeah, so the question for everybody is, where does our food come from? So when I start any tour at the Redwood Empire Food Bank, I say, I would like to start with why, and I say we're here because every day people in Sonoma County wake up and they're hungry. We can help them, and we do. But what we do and how we do it is extremely complicated. And the number one refrain from everybody who takes a tour is, wow, I had no idea. So we call it a complete serving. So we love people to come to the food bank so you understand the magnitude of what it takes to do 40 million pounds of food, 8,500 volunteers. Our annual budget's $11 million this year coming up. It's really big to feed 82,000 people. The food comes from so many places all across the country, but the produce, for example, comes from Arizona, Mexico, throughout the state of California, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And we get we pick up from the growers and packers. So we have a statewide program we call Farm to Family, and we go to the growers and packers where they're taking the gleaned product, the stuff that none of us will buy in the grocery store, this sort of ugly produce, if you would, but it's really not ugly, but you get the idea. It's just not the stuff that's picture perfect, and then we pay for that free food, we pay 3 cents a pound, which is a bargain, but when you're doing 20 million pounds of it, or pardon me, about 8.5 million pounds of it, it gets expensive after a while. So, and then the food comes from all over. We barter, we trade, we purchase, we steal, we do everything to get it. It's complicated.
Speaking of that, Dave, first of all, thank you for everything you do.
Thanks.
And Cox, everybody, you do amazing work. My question is more of a statement. When I was working with Cox and Representative Mark last year on some food distribution issues, it seems to me from the logistics of food operations, the food banking is very, very complex. It's not like there's a shortage of food where you can get it, but there's logistics. Am I correct on that?
They say that 25% of our nation's food supply is discarded every year, and I got to tell you, where I think the holy grail of available food is at the ingredient level. If I could go for my Nobel Prize, I would set up a database, a nationwide database that says these are the ingredients we have, and then you would have this enormous commissary situation where you could prepare, you could find the ingredients and make food. Because until it goes in that Kraft Foods box, until it goes in that Amy's box, until it goes into that General Mills box, it isn't worth anything. And then once it has that label on it, then it's worth gold, right? So there's a lot of food out there, an awful lot. And then it's just a question, but the question that always comes up, and I know I have a minute and a half, the question always comes back, do you pick up from hotels and all that kind of stuff? And we don't do that kind of food rescue because we're problem solvers. So you pick up from the Sheraton because they had a banquet and you have roast beef and stuff, and then they call you back that evening because now they have turkey, and then the next day they have more roast beef. You actually have to have some place to go with it. But if you filled everybody up when they all have all the perishable food in the world, then they'll never call you again because you're not solving their problems anymore. So, there's a lot of food, but it's got to be food in a way that people can use for more than an immediate meal. It's not practical. The people we serve work, right? They're not just sitting around waiting for their next meal. Yes, sir.
David, great presentation. I'm just curious about your best practices. I'm sure there are a lot of other food banks in the Bay Area, across the state, in different states, and I would imagine there's small, medium, large.
Yes.
So I'm just curious, have you found any lessons learned as you collaborate or share with others? How does that work?
There's an expression around the network of food banks, and there are 200 Feeding America food banks, which we're affiliated with. We're all independent, but it's like a membership thing. And there's an expression amongst food banks, which is if you've seen one food bank, you've seen one food bank. So everybody works within their communities very differently. And we have an expression at our food bank, which is that dogs don't have a sense of size, and that's why the little dog bites the big dog. And so we think we're big stuff. And so the programs that we operate, we take donated food and we make frozen meals that we deliver to seniors. We have the only market in the entire United States of America that's solely for income qualified people. So we think we're big, and nobody else has that. So it just depends on what your chemistry is and how you want to operate and what your community will support. But there's something to be learned from everything. I was in Tampa last week, in Phoenix, a couple weeks before. You're learning from them.
Not only the business model, but also in terms of the warehouse. I mean, you have like forklifts and everything. I couldn't believe it when I was up there. So
Sonoma County residents should be proud that we have a gem of a food bank, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. And we're here from now till the rest of our lives to be doing what we're doing. So we've been, other than the annual support, we're good to go. But thank you very much for your time and attention.
David, before you go, I do have one other thing for you. We have speaker for the speakers always. This is a nice Bluetooth speaker, and I hope you will enjoy it. And thank you so much for the great presentation. Really appreciate it. Okay, everybody, at this time, the Rotary meeting is coming to an end. Thank you all for being here. We had a great show. Next week is our last one. If you like steak, good desserts, good time, we'll see you there. Have a good week.